All right, what is going on? Happy Wednesday. Today we have a dilemma. We're going to solve said dilemma, and I will show you how. First, I will explain the dilemma. The dilemma is our little 24 meter here. It's got this high pressure back end on it. Uses the different outlet, different swing elbow and whatnot. What this does is, instead of having the prime port with a ball stopper right close to the back outlet, it's got it up here on the deck pipe. What is a pain in the butt about that is stops your sponges right up here. Open this up, open that up, trying to get them out. You try and flush them out with water, go gadget arm, try and push them out that way. Total pain in the butt. Other thing I don't like is the sponge doesn't come all the way back with the water and flush this all out. So usually you've got this kind of sitting full of concrete. So the way we are going to alleviate this is not water washing. It's not water washing, and it's not sucking a bucket. So what we are going to do is, or first I should start with what the guys have been doing. They've been sucking back a square sponge, suck it right into the hopper, suck a second sponge, stop it with a ball stopper, pluck it out, sponge that goes in the hopper. Hopefully it doesn't get cut. Quite often it does. Bye-bye sponge. Bye-bye $15 sponge. So what I'm going to do, and this is what we used to do on our pumps years ago, and we moved away from it when we got into using these ball stoppers. And a friend of mine, Art from Bare Bones Concrete Pumping, had reached out a while ago and said, do you ever use two sponges on a rope? Yes, we used to do that. And for this pump, I'm going to revisit that. And the reason why I'm going to revisit that is doing sponge, water sponge, not having the pin stopper. First ball comes through, sits right about here. Second ball, as it's coming through and all the water in front of it, the water hits this first ball, flushes it right into the hopper, quite often cuts the sponge. Problem, right? So we're gonna put two 5-inch round sponges on a piece of rope. We're gonna link them. The rope will be spaced about, I don't know, I'm gonna say about 16 inches apart. As such, you got a sponge, you got some rope, you got another sponge. When we suck them back, we put the first sponge in dry in the tip elbow. We fill a bunch of water in front of it, pushing the sponge in, push the second sponge in after. So we're pulling back sponge, water, sponge the whole way. What this does, when it gets to the elbows, there's not enough water to flush the whole assembly right through into the S-tube and potentially cut it. It will sit right where we want it. Everything here is nice and clean, all the way back to here. Don't have to fuss around trying to get sponges out of this 5-inch to 6-inch or 6-inch to 5-inch, however you wish to say it, reducer. And it works fantastic, especially on a small boom like this where you don't need quite as much water between the sponges. Works magnifique. I used to use this setup on our 58 meter. Issue I had with it, doing something like, what do they call it, Cornolia concrete. It's like 24 MPa and 6 hours, some crazy chemical mix. Anyhow, used to use those. Suck back the balls with the boom in the cradle one day just because the setup and the job site constraints called for it. Whole bunch of residue left in the pipes. So long and short of it is not enough water between the two sponges to clean out a big boom effectively. For this pump, it will be just fine. So I'm going to make those two sponges on a rope. We're going to go out, we're going to do a job, we're going to suck them back, and I will show you that it's going to work great. We'll open the back end up. The sponges will be sitting right here. The pipes will be nice and clean. We won't be cutting any sponges. Life is good. 2 round sponges on a rope. We get like a year to a year and a half out of them, rather than 15 bucks a sponge for the squares and chopping a sponge darn near every day, pumping 250 days a year. It adds up to a lot of money in a year. Something like, off the top of my head, I don't know, you could say $3,000 in sponges, right? 250 times 15, 2,500 plus $3,250 worth of sponges annually. We are going to stop that. We're going to save it. So yeah, anyhow, I will jump back in the yard here. I'm going to show you how we put this together. It's really easy, really effective, really great for most applications. So we'll reconvene here in a little bit. All right, here we go. Arts and crafts time. 2 sponges, some 3/8 nylon rope, 1 pointed pry bar, 1 length of PVC pipe. I'm not sure exactly which diameter this is, and I have beveled the ends on it. 1 piece of 1/4-inch thick arena board, as we Canadians call it, plastic board. So what we're going to do here, the long and short of it, is we're going to skewer the sponge with the pry bar. Slide the pipe over the pry bar. Slide the sponge down over the pipe as such that the sponge is skewered with the pipe. Slide the rope through the sponge. Pull the pipe out. Make some plastic washers. Washer on each side of the sponge. Repeat the process with a second sponge. Eventually we'll end up with 2 sponges on a rope, roughly 14 to 16 inches apart, and it'll be great. So, tools, drill with about the right size bit. I eyeballed the bit size. A hole saw. And like I said, a pry bar. Tube of grease. And a bench vise is always handy too. So let's get after it. The very first thing I am gonna do here, let's skewer a sponge. These are the medium density sponges from Putzmeister. You're gonna laugh at this. They do work better than a lot of the cheap offshore sponges. They hold vacuum better, they last longer, they don't swell up as much with usage and become 8-inch sponges. So I truly do believe these Putz sponges are better. So take a Putz sponge, dab her with some grease, a good amount of grease, like so. Move these drills out of the way. Jam this pry bar through the sponge. There's a better way to do this actually. We'll use the vise. We've got it here, why not? Something like so. A little bit of grease on the PVC pipe. Like so. Slide over the pry bar. Slide the sponge over. One skewered sponge. Feed the rope through the PVC pipe. Like so. Actually, what I'm going to do before I do this, I should, yeah, I'm going to make some plastic washers here, tie a knot. So let's skip to that. I haven't done this for a while, so be patient with me. So I'm making the plastic washers. Put this in the vise. Hold like so for demonstrative purposes. And I'll just show you one of these on camera. One. You kind of got to pick them out when you're done. I'll grab a little appropriate tool to do so here. Something like this. Just like that. Put it back in the vise, take my drill. Enlarge the center hole. Like that. Pull the PVC pipe out of the sponge, being certain not to pull the rope with it. Slide a washer over the rope. Something like that. Tie a knot in said rope. Something like that. Cut another PVC washer, plastic washer I should call it. Something like that. Once again, drill out the center. Washer over the rope. Make another knot. Now you got to remember, when these sponges get used, they are going to swell up a little bit and get a bit larger. So you want to leave the washer with a little bit of slack. Otherwise, if you have both washers tight to the sponge right now, as the sponge gets older and swells up, it's going to press against those washers and it'll distort in size. It won't be so much spherical, it'll become more of a donut. We don't want that. So leave a little bit of slack here. About like this is perfecto. Beautiful, one side done. Let's repeat the process here. Put our pry bar in the vise. Dab of grease, like so. Sponge over the pry bar, like so. Bit of grease on the PVC pipe. Pipe over pry bar. Sponge over pipe. Remember, before we do this, we're going to put this washer on. So let's drill a couple more washers real quick here. Let's be efficient this time. Let's do 2 at a time. How about that? Almost like a production line here. Try something different here so it's not so difficult to get the washer out of the hole saw bit. Come in from the back side to finish it off. That worked a lot better, other than the bit coming out of the drill this time. The washer is not nearly as buried in the hole saw bit, so that's a win. That actually worked better. Do the same thing again on this side. Same thing, we'll come back in from the other side. Well, that worked even better. Boom, just like that. Washers in the vise. Drill out the centers. I should be wearing safety glasses, yes I know. It's only plastic, people. Like so. Like I said, you want about 14 to 16 inches between the sponges. So I'm going to put my next knot right about here. About, it's a little bit much. A little bit much. About there. The idea with the spacing is you don't want too much rope, otherwise the first sponge can actually pass through the S-tube and could get cut. So you want it short enough that when this end here is sitting in the back of your S-tube and the large end, and this sponge here has reached the full 6-inch diameter of the elbow on the back end, there's no suction to keep pulling these right in and potentially cut them. So I'm actually going to loosen it off just a little bit here. A lot of this is by eyeball. It's not a science, people. Washer on, pass it through the PVC pipe. I don't want to grab the greasy side. You know what? It's inevitable. And remove the pipe from the sponge. Sponge on. Washer on. You know what? I'm going to tighten these up a little bit. I'm just looking at this before I get my final dimensions. Tighten up those knots a little bit. Slide this back. Remember, again, we don't want our washers tight. You want a little bit of slack. Give yourself about an inch, inch and a half. Just like that, people. 2 sponges on a rope. Let's grab myself a knife. I'll cut this off and we'll go outside and kind of go through the concept of how these are going to work. Check back in a second. All right, so here's the concept of the 2 balls on a rope. 1 sponge goes in your tip elbow. Push it in as far as you can. You may choose to put the pump in reverse and suck the ball ahead another half a stroke or so. Just about there. Now you're going to fully load this tip elbow with water. Insert the 2nd sponge with the pump slowly stroking in reverse. And now you've got sponge, water, sponge. You can pull this all the way back and without having the ball stopper in the back end as I showed you earlier. I'll show you on this pump, even though it does have the ball stopper. You're not going to have that flush of water in front of the 2nd sponge float that 1st ball in through your S-tube into the hopper and very likely cut it in half. Like I said, smaller brooms, this works awesome. Larger brooms, I personally don't believe that the volume of water quite often, depending on the mix, is sufficient enough to flush the pipes clean. But on the smaller broom, like a 40 meter and smaller, we use these things for years and they were absolutely the cat's ass. So there you go, there you have it. Give it a try. I will conclude the video with an on the job site practical application usage slash, I'm basically going to show you that they actually work. So we'll insert that at the end here, and then yeah, you can decide whether it's something you want to try or not. So just another way of doing it. All right, here we are on site. We're going to put theory into practice. 2 sponges on a rope. Here we go. So what Jag is going to do, we're going to put the 1st sponge in, and usually I say no water. We gave this a light rinse, so be it. But we're going to put the 1st sponge in, like so, with the pump slowly stroking in reverse. We'll take a couple strokes back just to pull that sponge to about here-ish. Perfect. It was actually only 1 stroke, imagine that. Now with the pump turned off, we're going to load this up with water. You can turn it down a little bit. We don't need too much pressure. It's going to wreck my video, bro. There we go. So we're going to load this elbow with water. It's probably going to be about 3 gallons of water, which is sufficient for this little pump. Insert elevator music here. And we'll load this right up. All the way to the top, as much water as we can get. All right, now we're gonna throw it in reverse. Slow speed in reverse. You can keep the water on, Jag, that's fine. And we'll let it take that ball back. Wait for the sound of the ocean, and we'll go nice and slow with this. And we'll wait for that sweet sound of success. It's Jag tapping on the pipe, you can hear that. Oh, and there's our ocean sound. All right, sponge is back. I'll do the tap too, just for effect. So what's gonna happen here, when we break open this back end, he's gonna have 1 sponge probably part way into the S-tube, the other sponge sitting right around here. Like I said, the reason why we do this is The ball stopper up here, it's a pain in the butt to stop the sponges here and have to pull them out. With this high pressure back end, if we do one sponge, a bunch of water, and a second sponge, the water in between the two will flush the first ball into the hopper, very likely cutting the sponge. The way we have it here, as soon as that second sponge gets into this 6-inch elbow, it's going to lose vacuum, and it cannot pull this the sponge rope sponge assembly all the way into the S-tube. You'll see here when he opens this up, I promise it'll be great. One thing I will say, I did a video previously on this about how I like to suck back at least one hard ball to get the pipes clean. I do 2 medium density balls on the rope. The reason I don't do one hard, one medium, with the hard ball, it's very difficult to get the sponge to go back slowly and controlled, and with the water in between, it tends to kind of skip over things. So for this setup, I do 2 medium sponges on the rope. Advantage being not cutting sponges for guys that don't have the luxury of having this pin stopper here on the prime port. So, and with the prime port in the actual proper location, not having this high pressure back end to deal with. So cut to the sequence where we open this up, and I promise you those sponges will be sitting right there. Even with the pump at full volume, I seriously doubt you could pull those balls through the S-tube and into the hopper. We shall see. Stay tuned. All right, here we go. Jagermeister's gonna bust this back end open. I'm not a super big fan of this for doing regular work. It's a bit cumbersome. But seeing as this is our backup high pressure pump, this does come in very handy for what we're using it for. What do you think? Is it going to be sitting right where I said? Yeah. I think so. I'm confident. We shall see. Show us what you got. It's even more fun getting this back together. What do we got? Oh, it's partially wrong. It actually pulled it to there. I would call that success.
Yeah. This is the best thing.
Yeah. So it's nice. It doesn't, like I said, yeah, and it won't pull it all the way into the S-tube and cut it. So that's exceptional. Most of the time that second ball sits right around here. We did a couple extra soaks there just to do the achieve the sound of the ocean effect for the film here, you know. But yeah, there we go. 2 sponges on a rope. Like I've said many times, my favorite thing about these round orange rubberized sponges is I will show you, super easy and quick to clean off. Unlike the square sponges, square foam, where you gotta rinse and wring them out forever like a dirty old mop. I've gotten seriously a year and a half out of a pair of these sponges on a rope before, true story. So anyhow, like I said, for a 40 meter and smaller boom, this is a hot little setup. Nice, convenient, efficient. So that'll be it for today. How's it go? Like, share, subscribe. X3 over and out.